Welcome, everyone, to the Directed IRA podcast with Matt Sorensen and Mark Kohler. We're excited to be coming to you 4 days before the IRA contribution deadline for 2020. Pretty special day here at Directed IRA.
Yes. Now, for those of you that are like, oh, I shouldn't listen to this podcast, it's after May 17th. No. This is an evergreen podcast because whether it's April 15th, May 17th, March 15th, or we're down the road in September or October 15th, all this extension deadline crap can get confusing on what deadlines allow you last minute procrastinator-itis options. So
yeah. And you know, you're going to be doing the same thing next year. You're going to be like, oh, crap, what's the deadline? And the next year, oh, and what can I get in? Can I use this account yet or that one? What one does the extension count for? Which ones does it not? So we're going to break it down. There's a little nuance for 2020 with the May 17th as opposed to April 15th, but everything else is the same. And so hopefully this will help you get a good grasp of what ones you got to remember each year, because a good person using a retirement account is contributing every year. And if you can afford it, contributing the max. And so these deadlines are critical, and also figuring out how you can maximize them too. We're going to talk about that.
Yeah. And I want to, again, make sure this is even broader. Don't forget about the March 15th deadlines with S Corps and LLCs. That plays into it too, people. And I'm going to throw this out as well. I just had a phone call, Matt, 2 hours ago with a brother-in-law. We all have one. I think most people do. Anyway, he's calling for free.
If you want one, I got an extra one. You know, no,
you have an extra one? All right. The free advice brother-in-law, and I can tease him. He knows. I'm getting a deal from him on his business. That's all I'm going to leave it, because I've got 3 or 4 brother-in-laws, so I don't want to call him out too much here. Anyway, was saying, hey, if I put money into a Roth, is it really locked down till I'm 59 and a half? And I said, no, the contributions can still come out for anything. So let's get the money in there. And some people freak out, well, I might need it later. Throw it in, get it going. So yeah, that's part of this conversation.
Yeah, that's the cool thing on the Roth IRAs is grab those contributions out whenever you want. Now, traditional accounts, yes, you got to pay the piper to get them out because the IRS gave you the tax deduction to put it in. So they're gonna hit you a 10% penalty. So, okay. Was that your tip? That was your tip, or you got another tip?
No, I've got a new tip here.
Oh, that was just. I thought that the brother-in-law was your tip.
No, I was just
that.
I'm just ad-libbing. That was ad-lib.
Oh gosh, you're so good. Okay.
You know, I thought by now you'd know my ad-libbing. But that's okay. I have a tip. Normally on the Main Street Business Podcast, which if some of you have not gotten over to the Main Street Business Podcast, we encourage you to do so. It's more broad, again, in the sense that we want to talk about small business in general, tax, legal, growth strategies. Yesterday, we talked about the emotional support animal. And are they a write-off? And what do you do as a landlord if someone shows up with these animals? A really, really interesting show. A little different from our normal format. We had a guest. But I would encourage all of you to get over to Main Street Business Podcast. On that show, we do a little tax and legal tip. Something we normally don't do here. We just dive into our topic. So I thought, Matt, today you need a tip. So I've got a new book. I'm just embracing parenthood, because any of you parents out there, you pretty much are just shooting for not screwing up your kids. I mean, that's right. That's usually the bar. Once they're teenagers, you're like, I give up. Obviously, I screwed up, because any of you with a teenager, you experience that and you go, whatever I did the first 15 years of life obviously was not helpful. I've got this hellion in my house. Then they turn 20 and they're sleeping on the couch and you're like, what the hell did I do? You know, okay. So I have a new book. It's titled right here. For those that are on YouTube, you can see this. How to Traumatize Your Children. 7 Proven Methods to Help You Screw Up Your Kids Deliberately and with Skill. And I thought, yeah, literally, this is the book. It is so good. I thought, hey, if I'm going to screw them up, I might as well take pride in that. So, okay. So I'm going to give you just 5. I mean, this thing is.
There's a tip in here
Yeah. There's 5 tips. I mean,
is there
I'm just
a
going to
book recommendation on how to scrub your kids? If anyone can give this tip, just kidding.
Thank you. Boy, kick a guy when he's down. All right. It's college acceptance time right now. So you're like looking in the mail. Did my kid really get in anywhere? Are we going to the junior college? Okay. All right. So here's tip number 1. Perfection is the goal, setting up your child for failure. Okay. There is no such good thing as good enough. It's only perfection. So teach them this early in life. Okay. Number 2, love is for winners, your child and his achievements. If your child believes you will love them no matter what, even if he's a failure, you're doing them wrong. Teach your child that he has intrinsic worth. He does not have intrinsic worth unless he succeeds. Okay, that's a good one. No limits. Number 3, no limits, no boundaries. This is a whole chapter. I'm just giving you the title of the chapter. I mean, you gotta really dive into this thing.
Yeah, you gotta earn these tips.
No limits, no boundaries. Discipline is for mean, evil parents. Not to mention that discipline is the least fun part of a parent's job. So you need to embrace no limits and no boundaries. The indulgent parent lets the child be in charge. Okay. Number 4, never hold your child accountable. It is never your child's fault. When your child attempts to blame someone else for a problem, encourage this resourceful response.
Yeah.
Are you loving these? You're not even laughing.
I'm giving some laughs. I'm giving some laughs.
I think these are great. Okay, number 5, which I think is a winner, and this relates to the Roth IRA, because we're gonna talk about the deadline here for putting money in your kids.
You're gonna bring it back. You're bringing it back. Okay, I like it.
It's a loose. It's
okay. I feel like you're a comedian on stage trying to transition from like.
I'm the opening act.
Yeah, you're just gonna fail in the transition here.
You know what? Will you just enjoy these lists? Okay, number 5. Okay, number 5. Buy your child's love. Children are becoming consumers at younger and younger ages, thanks to clever advertising campaigns that are targeted directly at your offspring. No longer is it the parent's job to introduce kids to products and materialism. Embrace it. And there's stages of indulgence. I love it. 9 stages.
Wow.
And number 9 is don't ask your child to move out at any age. Send her money whenever she requests it. So,
all right.
When you're talking about getting your kids a Roth IRA, it takes skill. You just got to do it and embrace the fact you're going to turn them into a trust baby someday, and they're going to be complete useless citizens in America contributing to society. So that's what we're trying to do here.
If you're going to have little trust fund babies, you might as well give them a tax-free account like a Roth IRA and do it in a responsible, tax-efficient way.
Yeah.
I mean,
why not?
Yeah.
Do it with skill.
Yeah.
Don't you like? All right. Do you want a copy? Do you want me to send you a copy?
I think I just got the highlights. I'm good.
We'll go next week. I'll give you more. There's a whole chapter on promoting sibling rivalry.
Oh, okay.
While parents play a key role in killing their children's self-esteem, siblings can also be enlisted in the effort. Good stuff. All right. Okay, I got to quit leaning on the table here. I'm jiggling the camera. Producer's not happy. All right. Okay, so let's get on to the boring topic, Matt Sorensen. Please.
Just like, any good relationship, there's like the fun dad, and then there's the mom who gets everything done. That's
someone's got to be the adult here.
Yeah, someone's got to do it. So, well,
okay.
I know you guys come for the IRA tips, and you just get some Mark Kohler comedy hour as we get into the topics, and that's what makes this digestible. All right, well, let's start hitting the deadlines and what you need to know by April 15th of each year, which for 2020 contributions, which we're doing now, is a special deadline of May 17th, 2021. All right. So if you want to make 2020 contributions for this year, you've got until May 17th, 2021. Typically each year you get April 15th. We want to categorize the ones you got to worry about because it's not all of them. Some of them you get different dates. We want to hit the deadlines you need to know for May 17th. All right, you want me to start rattling?
No, I'm going to say this too. We've got the 401k and the SEP.
Yep.
We're going to reserve those for a little later because we've got a March 15th deadline every year, which wasn't moved this year. So we'll come back to the SEP and the 401k. But Matt, why don't you start with your top favorite?
All right. Okay, so let's hit the common ones that you need to do April 15th typically each year. Again, March 17th for this year right now. IRA, traditional IRA.
You said March 15th, May 17th.
May 17th. May 17th.
Yeah, think April 15th every year. Yeah.
Yeah, April 15th typically, which again, you get till May 17th this year because of COVID. So, all right, so we got the traditional IRA, the Roth IRA, the health savings account, the Coverdell education savings account. These are all deadlines typically on April 15th of every year for the prior year contribution. Now, one thing that's important to note is a lot of people like to double up contributions when they make them. So right now, if you didn't make a 2020 contribution, you have until May 17th this year to make your 2020 contribution to any one of those accounts, and you can make your 2021 contribution because we're in 2021. So you can double up contributions to any of those accounts I just rattled off.
All right. And we've got another nuance we'll come back to in a moment, and that is the step for the backdoor Roth. Some of you are saying, can I still do the backdoor Roth? Yes, I may add that to the list if I could, because it is kind of unique. So we'll come back to that. Here's something I think, Matt, that should be said right from the start. So if we've got traditional IRA, Roth IRA, HSA, ESA, and the backdoor Roth. So there's 5. Okay.
Yep.
Those are all typical April 15th deadlines. Someone 2 days ago, I was on a consult with a client, and they said, I already filed my tax return, my 1040, because one of my kids needed to get their FAFSA form in for college applications and student aid. Obviously, they were filing the program of, screwing up their kids, making them go into student debt further. That's a chapter in here too. So anyway, they had filed their tax return. Some of these, doesn't matter if you already filed. For example, a Roth. A Roth is not a deduction on your tax return. So if you already filed your 1040, maybe in January, February, or March, because you were in a hurry, you can still do the Roth, and you could do the traditional IRA, backdoor. I'm going to say the backdoor Roth IRA. So let me just start that over. You could do the Roth IRA, the backdoor Roth, and the education savings account, because you don't get a deduction in those 3 scenarios: a Roth, a backdoor Roth, or an ESA. We'll go through the numbers here in a minute, but those 3, don't worry if you've already filed your return, because the other 2, a traditional and an HSA, those are going to give you a write-off, and you got to wait to do your return.
Yeah. Yeah. Love it. Okay. So now the next thing I think that's important to know is there's no extension for this. So April 15th is the normal year on these contribution deadlines. You do not get an extension. Even if you file an extension to file your tax return, but I got an extension until October 15th on my personal return. Can I contribute up to that deadline? Not for any of those accounts we just rattled off: traditional, Roth, HSA, ESA.
Yeah, and I love this point, Matt, because I'm just dying to jump in on this, is because if you say, well, I'm extending, so these deductions don't work if I extend. No. You can still make the traditional IRA contribution and the HSA contribution and harvest the write-off in a sense. You just haven't put it in your basket yet. So you haven't filed a return yet, but you can check it off. Yep, I did it. So when you go to do your tax return in July or August, you can say, yeah, I did meet the deadline before April 15th, this year, May 17th, to do a traditional or an HSA.
Okay, cool. All right, so we got the main accounts that you're going to do for April 15th, typically each year, May 17th for this year. Now let's talk about ones that, what's that?
Should we just talk about each one a little bit, the numbers?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So we'll go with the order you gave.
Okay.
I say, well, actually, let me change it up. I say we go traditional and HSA first because those are deductible.
Yep. Okay.
Then we'll do the Roth, the ESA, and the Backdoor Roth.
Okay.
Okay. Traditional. What would you say first, Matt? What you give me your take? I've got my
6,000
mark color calendar here with important numbers. Yeah. But okay, you go
so
first.
You get 6,000 for 2020. That's also the amount for 2021, by the way. Plus, you get $1,000 bump up if you're 50 or older. All right. Ooh. So you get to throw in an extra 1,000 for those that have, hit the 50 or older mark.
Okay. Now, some of you go, "Oh, that's simple." No, it's not. What happens if you turn 50 before you before your tax return filing, or is it 50 before December 31st? It is 50 before December 31st. So you get to put in an extra 1,000, which is the next issue, if you turn 50 before December 31st of 2020. But if your spouse doesn't, they get to do the 6. So your spouse doesn't get to piggyback on your age in this situation. We're going to come to the HSA in a minute where they do.
You can still get them the senior discount at the movie theater when you go, though. Okay. That's a that's a different rule.
Oh. Yeah. Boy, man, I think that's a little aggressive.
That's what I've heard. You play that however you want.
Now, so Matt's getting digs in here, folks, because I turned 50, which many of you ladies watching this on YouTube are like, "Really? I can't believe that. He looks so much younger than Matt." But I am now over 50. So
those were subtle digs,
Yeah, subtle. Those were inside digs that many of you wouldn't notice, but I'm going to bring them to light and just tell you that Matt is a very mean person.
It just happens to be a magic age for retirement account contributions too. So embrace it. It's a good thing.
Okay.
All right. What about what do you want to do, the HSA? Or you still want to talk about the IRA?
Well, I want to talk about the traditional because here's the deal too. Okay. Yes. Because Matt, here, I think this is a little more challenging because a lot of people say, should I do a traditional IRA or a Roth? And I say, if you need the write-off, what do you think, Matt?
I like to do the Roth. I'm always like, go Roth. For new contributions, just go Roth. Just don't worry about the tax deductions now. Build a tax-free account for the future. Now, that's a different question for people who already have traditional. And do I go to Roth? I don't know. That's a different equation. But for IRA contributions, it's $6,000. It's not a huge tax deduction you're going to get. Let's just go Roth. Let's just start off strong.
Now, you can do a traditional and get a write-off if you or your spouse have a employer plan at work, but your income comes into play. And so rather than, I'm just going to say them in general, if you are a participant in a plan at work and you're single, if you make more than 76 grand, you're not going to be able to do a deductible traditional. If you're married, that limit is 125 grand. If you're a non-participant at a plan at work, but your spouse is a participant at work, that number goes up to 208 grand. If neither spouse has a plan at work, then you can always get a deductible traditional. But if you're making that much money, we're going to be leaning towards possibly a solo 401k or other strategies. But I just wanted to get that out there, people, that you've got to say, we're sometimes chasing our tail with a traditional IRA. The write-off, I don't think is worth it. Matt, you were telling me this earlier this morning that sometimes when you do the math, if you can start with a Roth, you're always going to win in the end. It's converting where you maybe have to do a little more math. What do you think?
Yeah, and I think especially if you're in a lower income bracket, like if you're below 100 grand, the tax deduction you get on your traditional account's not that significant. Now, if you're like in the highest tax bracket, like you're in the 37% bracket, you're making a few $100,000 a year. I get it. You're going to have a higher tax bill. And so the traditional account is nice, but you know what? you're going to phase out on a lot of these traditional contributions if you got any 401k at work or your employer or your spouse does, like Mark mentioned. So just do the backdoor Roth, which is what we're going to recommend there, which has no tax deduction. So I like just, if you don't know, go Roth. That's size. Okay. If you don't know, go Roth. That's the default. But
all right, now here's a caveat to what Matt just said. If you don't know if the write-off's worth it, go Roth. Now here's another quirk though. Now once we get through some of these little quirks, the other options we're going to go through are going to go faster. Yeah. It's just this first thing, you got to think through this. Do I need the write-off? Now here's another one. I had a client last week that said, well, I want to do, I haven't done my tax return for last year. I may have made too much to do a Roth. So then I said, if you don't know, go traditional, because we can convert it to Roth later. If you do a Roth right now, see, if Matt says, when in doubt, go Roth. Whoa, if you think you're going to make more than 140 grand single or 200 grand married, now you've got to go hold it. If I might make that much, I better go traditional now. I'm not going to get a write-off anyway, and convert it to Roth. That's the backdoor Roth. And so the backdoor Roth starts with traditional, and you have to think, how much income am I going to have? Is that a fair point? You're okay with me amending your rule?
Yep, that's a great point. Great consideration. I think that's a good point for people that are going to be on the bubble. Because if you are on the bubble where it's like, man, I might need to do here's one thing you could do also though. If you're like, well, I would just want to be Roth from the get-go, just do a backdoor. Because if you're under the income limit, the backdoor still works. If you're over the income limit, the backdoor still works. Just go traditional, immediately convert to Roth. Easy peasy.
Now, Matt says that easily because at directedira.com, little plug, we have a backdoor Roth IRA program where you fill out one freaking application, you only pay one account setup fee, and boom, you're done. But if I told a client this morning, I go, if you're going to do the backdoor Roth, just go to our program. Because if you go to Merrill Lynch or Ameritrade and try to do a backdoor in the next 4 days, you have to set up 2 accounts. You have to do a traditional and then convert it to Roth later. And you are going to set up 2 accounts that could cost you more. A lot of times they'll screw it up because they think you meant a Roth to begin with, and it's just more cumbersome. So if you're going to do the backdoor Roth, that's why Matt says, when in doubt, just do a backdoor Roth package, which we have. Easy schmeezy. Yeah. So.
And we do set up 2 accounts, just so everybody knows, and we do have a discounted fee for the additional kind of dummy account, which is your traditional account in this example, where you contribute in and it gets converted to Roth. And we have a whole separate episode on the backdoor Roth. So the problem right now is executing this in the next couple of days, depending on when you're listening to this, if you're children out for 2020, we're setting up accounts like crazy right now. So I hope there's not many trying to get through the door right now. Now we're working them. So you got a couple days, but be ready to get that stuff in. Now, here's another tip on getting your contribution deadline in by the actual deadline.
Yes. Good tip.
Okay. Now you can always wire it or ACH it, but if it's postmarked, if you send a check, as long as the envelope was postmarked on May 17th, typically April 15th, for every other year, we can receive it and accept it in as a 2020 contribution. All right. It's going to come in our system late, but we will be able to accept it. We have to scan in the envelope and have evidence of it that it was actually made timely.
Yeah. And you want to go with the envelope method if it's 2 o'clock on Monday. See, the 17th is on a Monday, and it has to leave your bank account by on or before May 17th, close of business. So if you're going to miss the wire deadline or an ACH deadline, stop, write out a damn check and run down to the post office and have them stamp it. Or if luckily you maybe have a meter at your office or something, you can just run it through the machine and go, pa-chink, May 17th, then drop it in the mail. You're good. As long as it's stamped on an internal posted machine, May 17th, you're good. But if you go down to the post office and put it in at 11:59 at night, and they open up the bin in the morning and stamp it May 18th, you're jacked up.
Yep.
So got it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Next.
All right.
If you're going to open this, I thought you were going to say this, Matt. If some of you are like, okay, I better do it before May 17th. Don't wait till Monday to do this, people. Matt brings up getting the money in, but just getting the account set up can be some time. We have DocuSign and we try to make it as simple and as fast as possible. But you don't want to be blaming your broker dealer or us or your bank. Start this on the weekend. Get it going, and it's your first thing on Monday morning if you are going to do it on May 17th. Don't wait again until 4 o'clock and think someone's going to pull a rabbit out of a hat for you. So
Yep. Okay. Let's go over the Roth IRA in general.
Should we stick with that before we go to HSA? Probably, because we've
been going back and forth between traditional and Roth, and HSA's got a different limit. So let's hit Roth. Okay. It's the same 6 you get to put in, 50 and older, get an extra 1,000, 7. I will make 0 jokes. Now on the Roth, as we've been talking a little bit about the backdoor Roth and peppering that into some of the conversation here. But the Roth IRA is limited for those that are high income. All right. So for 2020, if you're single or head of household and your adjusted gross income, once you hit about 124 grand, you start phasing out, and you're fully phased out at 139,000 of how much you can put into a Roth IRA. For married, it starts phasing out at 196,000, and you're fully phased out and can put nothing in at 206,000 of adjusted gross income. So unless you do the backdoor.
Don't hang up. A lot of people just stop there and turn off, and they go, my accountant said I can't do it. No. Okay, so Matt, continue the story. I just wanted to.
All right. Okay, so for those of you underneath these limits, and you don't feel like you're going to break them. Now for 2020, right? You typically know. Now maybe you don't have your return done, but you generally know. I hit those numbers or didn't. So I can throw this in as just 6,000, go clean and easy through the front door for my Roth IRA, put my 6 grand in, and you're done. And if you want to throw in your 2021 contribution at the same time, because you want to just get 12 grand in there, throw that 6 grand in there too, because we're in 2021. All right. Now, if you're high income, you will do the backdoor Roth. All right. This is a combo thing we've mentioned already of making a traditional contribution that's non-deductible because you're high income anyways, you don't get it, that you immediately convert to Roth. There's no tax to convert because you didn't take a deduction. It's a slick, cool strategy that works for high income people that want Roth. Now, there's a couple catches to it and things you got to know. So we got details at Directed IRA. There's a Backdoor Roth IRA page that goes through the rules. And also we did a whole podcast episode just on the Backdoor Roth.
And for you techies out there, let me add a little nuance. You're doing the $6,000 or $7,000 non-deductible traditional IRA contribution now for 2020 before May 17th. And then you're converting it to a Roth in 2021. Now, some people would say, well, I've got to pay tax on the conversion. Not in this instance, because you didn't get a deduction in the first place because you made too much money. And you're like, oh my gosh, this is a loophole. Yes, it is. It is pretty darn cool. It's been around for years. It's not high risk, very, very common, but it gets complicated at the broker dealers when you wait till the last minute again. Now, theoretically, again, for you techies, because you're probably thinking this, well, I could make my traditional contribution before May 17th, and then I could convert it in June or July. I don't have to convert it the same day. That's true. You could wait to do the conversion a month later, but don't forget, and you have to do it by December 31st. We like it done all at once because it's the cumbersome process of creating 2 accounts, and some broker dealers, and Matt said this before, if you're going to go that route, wait a month because you need to let that traditional account go through the system so they know that you really have a traditional. If you call them up 3 days later and go, convert that to a Roth, someone on the front end, and we've seen this happen many, many times, they'll go, oh, well, this person obviously meant to do a Roth on the first point. I'm not going to convert. I'm just going to change the account type. That doesn't cut it. So,
yeah.
Anyway,
and one thing too on the backdoor, just to note, we have a lot of backdoor accounts coming in right now. It's worth noting this is there's no such thing when you contribute to your custodian, whoever it is, whether it's directed IRA or TD Ameritrade or Fidelity, to say this is a non-deductible traditional IRA contribution. It's just a traditional IRA contribution. Okay. Yeah. You're going to claim it to be non-deductible when you file your 1040. Okay. That's on your personal return. I think it's Form 8606, which goes with it, which is where you're going to claim the Roth conversion. So when you contribute to your traditional account, you're just making a traditional contribution. And so don't get caught up to be like, well, I need to make sure this is non-deductible. I mean, we're just going to book it in as a contribution to a traditional account that you're going to convert to Roth, and you're going to get a 1099. But when you fill out this 8606 with your 1040, you're going to say, oh, it was non-deductible that I converted, so no tax.
Okay, but here again, people, that form claiming that it's a conversion that's not taxable is on your 2021 tax return. So see, you're making your traditional contribution non-deductible for 2020. It doesn't go on your 2020 return because it was non-deductible. Yeah. And you could have already filed a return. That's what I said earlier. See, you can do the backdoor Roth if you've already filed your 1040 because it doesn't show up there. But this backdoor conversion that's non-taxable has to, you got to tell the IRS that's what's going on. The IRS doesn't want to be in the dark. And that form is on your 2021 return. All right. Now, one more thought on Roths. Kids. So this brings it around to my amazing 5 tips at the beginning of the show. You can still contribute to your kids' Roth IRAs before May 17th for their earned income for last year. Now, I had a client the other day that said, well, I never paid my kid in my business. I'm going to do it this year. I said, well, did your daughter have babysitting income? Yeah. Well, that's earned income. Oh. And so think outside the box. If you want to contribute $500 or $1,000, or it's up to $6,000 again, no matter what their age is, you have to just show that they have earned income last year. And it could even be babysitting income. Now, I would prefer it's well documented. Pay your kids out of your business before December 31st. We talk about that every year. But for some of you that missed it, it's not the end of the world. You might be still able to create it. Now, if you're not going to self-direct their account and you're only throwing in a couple thousand, just go open up an online account somewhere. I don't care. I say Ameritrade all the time because their website is pretty slick and easy and whatever. You could do an Acorns account, which I love, and that could be a Roth. So get the money into your Roth for your kids by May 17th based on their earned income for last year.
Yeah. Love it. Okay.
All right.
All right.
Well, we've knocked out 3 now. We've knocked out traditional, Roth, and backdoor. Okay.
All right.
You choose the next one.
Let's do the health savings account.
All right. Now, this one gets to be a little trickier, and I wrote an article on it this week. It's on my website, and markjkohler.com. We'll put it in the show notes. Also, Matt, we should put in the show notes that backdoor Roth stuff, because I know you've got an article on it and good stuff.
Yeah, directedira.com/backdoor Roth IRA.
Yeah. Okay. On the HSA, this is a deductible contribution. So if you've already filed your 1040, you would need to amend it. It's on the front page of your 1040. There's all sorts of rules, not all sorts, but you've got to have a high deductible plan. And that plan must have been in effect by December 1st of 2020. So let's say you meet the rules for an HSA. We're not going to go, we had a whole podcast on that before too. But the point is, this year for 2020, before May 17th, you can put in $3,550 if you're single, $7,100 if you're married. If you're over age 55 to age 65, you can put in an extra $1,000. Okay, now this, I'm about ready to make it more tricky, but what would you say on the basics, Matt? Anything you'd add to on that?
Well, again, I just like the concept of you can make 2020 contributions still and the 2021 all at once. You just see that a lot of clients just doubling up and just getting it in, you know. And again, you got to always have the qualifying HSA coverage insurance plan, high deductible plan in force. You would have had to have that back by December 1st for 2020 in order for this to count. So the only thing I know is just keep in mind, you can make double contributions and you have to have the high deductible plan in the year you're making the contribution.
Now, what makes this nice? There's no income limits. There's no income assessment. There's none of that crap. Mitt Romney, or I want to say Warren Buffett, but I think he's over age 65. Once you turn 65, you can't make new contributions. So I'm trying to think of someone that might, Mark Cuban, he's under age 65. Mark Cuban, owner of the Mavericks on Shark Tank, he can do an HSA contribution and he can get a write-off on the front page of his tax return, no matter how much money he makes. I don't know how Elon Musk is not 65 either, so he could do it.
Yeah.
Matt Sorensen, think of another rich person you know. Matt Sorensen could do it. Okay. Now,
thanks for not questioning whether I'm 65 or not.
Yeah. Fair enough. Okay, but I will say this. Now, here's where it gets a little tricky. For those of you that have turned age 55, you get this makeup provision of $1,000. Well, if you're married, then you turn 55 before December 31st, you can do the makeup of $1,000 into the joint HSA account. Okay, that's cool. So for 2020, you would put in $7,200 in the next 4 days, because one of you turned 55 before December 31st. Okay, cool. What happens if both of you turned 55 last year? Oop, different strategy. Because now you only get the $1,000 for the joint plan. You only get each $1,000 if you separate the HSA into 2 separate HSA accounts. Now, actually, I even said that wrong. I want to clarify this. The joint HSA lives on. But this year, because both of you turned 55, you'd both open your own HSA at this point, which is, and I'm going to tell you why this plays out down the road too. So you both have an HSA, and then you can put in $4,550 rather than just $7,200. So you get that $8,100. I said $7,200, didn't I? The $1,000 goes on to the $7,100. So you get an extra $1,000, which can add up and is a big deal. And you want to set up 2 separate HSAs once both of you are 55. Now, what happens if you're in the 55 to 65 and your spouse turned 65 last year? That's okay, but they had to make the contribution before they turned 65. So you don't have until May 17th for the last year. You can only make those contributions up until you turn age 65, not the year you turn 65. So you missed the boat if one of you turned 65. It's too late now. You had to make that contribution before you turn that age.
Okay.
But your spouse lives on and they're under age 65. So they're going to keep their HSA going. You can keep investing yours. You just can't put new money in it, but your spouse can. So anyway, you can see how this gets a little tricky. In my article, I go through 3 or 4 different scenarios where one is over 55, one's not, both are, one's over 65, blah, 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 blah. For all of you young people, put money in. Freaking A. You need it. You're going to need it. You're going to have a kid. You're going to blow out your knee. You're going to, rip your rotator cuff. You're going to fall off your bike. You're going to get in a car accident. You are going to need that health savings account, and you can pull it out at any time. You don't have to wait till you're older. So don't get into this gobbledygook of I'm not 55 or 60. Just freaking put money in your HSA. It's a write-off.
Yeah.
It's freaking awesome.
You brought up a good point on the age, like how old you are. So when you're too old to contribute, like 65 on the HSA, for IRAs, this is a new change. For traditional IRAs, you used to not be able to contribute once RMDs start, which used to be 70.5 is now 72. But that restriction has been removed. So you can still contribute to even traditional IRAs past age 72. Roth IRAs the same. You've always been able to do that. So you can always contribute to a Roth IRA at any age now too. So, so don't worry about that on your age. And whether you still should at that age is another factor, but that age restriction's been removed for traditional IRAs and Roth IRAs too. You don't have to worry about being too old.
Okay, can I ask you a hard question?
Okay.
I don't know the answer. So before this rule change, could you not do a backdoor Roth when you were over age 72 and made too much money?
No, you wouldn't be able to because you couldn't put in money to a traditional.
Oh, even if it was non-deductible.
Yeah. Even
okay.
if it's non-deductible.
Next question. Dang it, I had another really good question. Okay, so with this rule change, that you can put money into it. Oh, is your income limit for the Roth or the traditional based on your AGI or earned income?
It's modified adjusted gross income. That's the income limit.
Okay. Which is pretty much AGI. It's not, because it's going to include rental income, interest, dividend, K1 income. Yep. Generally. Okay. All right. So we could say generally AGI.
Yep.
Okay. That's very interesting. Okay. Yeah. Good. Gosh, I learned something new today too. Okay. Anything else on HSAs?
Nope.
Guys, you can take out the money anytime. Yep. And yesterday on our show on Main Street Business, we talked about how your HSA can pay for that pet of yours as an emotional support animal. Matt recently obtained a ESA, emotional support animal, for himself. And I've really noticed a new Matt. I think you're more stable. I really do.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I got a cute little cat. So yeah, her name's Duffy. She's adorable.
Now I better give my disclaimer. I know it's Mental Awareness Week and emotional support animals are legit. They are real. Nothing is more soothing and seriously relaxing for me to come home at the end of a long day and throw a ball for my dog and just play fetch. I mean, really. And so we joke about it, but the ESA is legit. Some people take advantage of it, and we talked about that on the show. But no offense to anyone out there, you run with it. You go.
Yeah. All right. So let's hit the Coverdell next.
Okay.
Okay. Because that's an April 15th this year, May 17th contribution deadline. That is $2,000. Okay. You put in 2,000. There's no difference depending on age. But remember, the Coverdell is you're putting that money in and you're listing a child as the beneficiary who was, going to use this for higher education expenses.
You need to stop down slow. Yep. I would say you're opening the account for a child. Then someone's going to put in the money. I think we need to make that distinguish that right from the beginning. Could you start over? I think this is good. Yeah. No cut for you. We want this is good because people need to realize there's three people involved. Go ahead, start over.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
So so the Coverdell, let's just hit the deadlines. April 15th is the regular deadline. May 17th for this year, for 2020, you can put $2,000 in. Now, who do you put it in for and who puts it in can depend. So if you're a parent, you're typically the one setting up the account for your child. You may put the money in for him. You may not. Okay? Because there's depositor rules on the income of the person depositing the money. You're still the responsible person on the account. You're the parent setting up for your kid who is the educational beneficiary that gets to use it. But there's an income limit on who can put the money into a Coverdell. So if you exceed the income limit, you can say, that's cool. I'm still the responsible person on the account. It's still for my kid, but I'm not going to put the money in. Maybe I have someone else put the money in who's called the depositor.
And that can be pretty much anybody. And a lot of times parents gift money to grandparents or whatever. Now I've got an article on ESAs, and Matt and I covered this entire topic on Coverdells on a previous show, and we'd encourage you to listen to it. But here's just the big takeaways for today. It's $2,000 per child. Now, if they have two Coverdell education savings accounts, that's $1,000 each. It's $2,000 combined over all accounts per kid. And the deadline, as Matt mentioned, for last year's contribution, $2,000 is non-deductible. You don't get a deduction for it. Now, some people are like, well, this sucks. I'm going to go do a 529. No. In my article, I take it head on. I think the 529 is a joke. I know it makes people mad that I say that. I will debate it all day long. I think your annualized rate of return after administrative costs for a 529 is pathetic. Yes, you can put in a bunch of money. That's not helping you. It's helping the person managing your money. I want you to have a Coverdell ESA because it's a lower contribution amount, but you control the investment. You can buy stocks, bonds, mutual funds, cryptocurrency, gold, silver, or even real estate or investments privately held. And that way you can get a far, far better rate of return. So even though it sounds low on the contribution amount, you can get such a better rate of return. So be careful thinking it's all 529 or nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. The 529 is kind of like a savings account. I mean, it's got a really low yield. You can look them up. You don't get a tax deduction to put money in a 529 from the IRS either. So, I mean, some states give a tax deduction on 529 contributions, but it's not significant. So the upside, of course, is improving the value of that account by getting good returns so that there's more money in the account that can come out to cover your child, grandkid, whoever it may be, educational expenses.
Okay. Now, this goes back to our book on how to screw up your kids. There's a whole section on spoiling your children, which I think is very, very important. So if you're going to start saving for your kids' college and not make them work through college, you want to hear some sob story. You get Matt Sorensen started on paying for college and working 3 jobs. You won't hold back. You're going to. So I don't know, Matt, is it spoiling the happily spoiled child? Page 95. Oh, I just want to dive into it. But I don't know, Matt, paying for your kids' college? Any
pros and cons, pros and cons to it, I think that a good parent would want to help with that, but not satisfy every penny. You know what I mean? Like kids need to have a job that's good for them, builds character, helps them learn to work with someone else and take orders from someone else, not just their parents or their teacher. So college is kind of like a coming of age thing. Going to college really for me is, and I think, Elon Musk, I think, is the one who's famously quoted, college is about showing that you can show up on time and do your chores more than it is about the knowledge you learn. But it's kind of like to prove, hey, I can do this and do what I'm told and get my stuff done and, get it in on time and do a good job at something. That's what it's showing. And so.
Yep. There's a section in the book, Matt just hit it, results for the indulged child. It says, if you put every effort towards indulging your child's every whim, which Matt said, don't, I don't know. This book says otherwise. It says there's so much to look forward in adulthood. Your gourmet offspring, after having all of their whims indulged upon, are characterized by the following traits. 1, chronic boredom thanks to never having learned to entertain themselves. Low tolerance for frustration. Demanding and self-centered attitude. Oh, I love that one in a kid. I love that one. They face the harsh reality when they get into the outside world without parents paying their way. I mean, this is classic. So
yeah, rude awakening.
They believe the rules do not apply to them. I've really succeeded on that one. I just want to say, I have lived this book. I'm really excited about it. Okay, now, okay, let's talk about the 401k and the SEP for you business owners. Is that all right? Can we switch over there? All right. Now, I don't want everybody out there to think it's this scarcity mentality, or it's all small business strategies or all personal strategies. You can do a lot of both of these. For example, you can have a solo 401k or a SEP and still do a backdoor Roth and some Roth strategies. So if you've got the money to put away, and I had a phone call with a client just recently, I know it was this week, it was Thursday today. He said, I'm having one of the best years. Luckily, my business has been benefited from the COVID pandemic. And she said, I'm going to make 3 times as much as I did last year. I want to put away as much as I can. So we're going to double down. So when we move on to the business topic, don't forget, you can probably do both. Some of these things we've already been talking about, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 of them, and then still do something on the business side. So that's my first point. Don't think it's one or the other.
Yeah.
Which one do you like better,
Matt? Let's do the solo K.
Okay.
You want to hit the solo K?
That's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the popular one. That's what most of our clients are doing. There's many people who still do a SEP IRA, but if you're self-employed and you can want to contribute large amounts, the solo K is just a better deal. It really is. It's a little more work and fees, but it's just a better deal. Okay. The solo K is a little tricky because it depends on what your company structure is. See, a solo 401k, the same as a SEP, your contribution deadline depends on what type of tax filing you make as a business. Are you an S Corp? Are you a partnership? Are you a sole proprietorship? Your deadline to contribute depends on your company return deadlines.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Good call.
Now let's walk. You want to walk through some of the different ones?
You do it. Yeah. I was doing all that HSA age crap.
Okay.
I'll sit back and let you run this, man. You know what you're doing.
Okay. All right. So contribution deadlines for, let's do S Corp and partnership LLC. Okay. Your company return deadline for an S Corp or partnership LLC is March 15th. That means you've got until March 15th to put employee and employer contributions in. Now, you can extend that. So if you do the 6-month extension and you file a company extension, your contribution deadline for employee and employer also gets extended until the extension deadline of September 15th. So if you haven't contributed yet for 2020, the only way you're getting money in now is if you extended your S Corp return deadline because it's past March 15th.
Yep. Now, Matt, just as much as I'd like to say that was technical, it really is the general rule because things can get even more unique.
Yeah.
For example, if some of you did not take a salary out of your S Corp, your employee contribution isn't going to happen because you didn't take a salary. You weren't an employee. You didn't take a salary. I had a call with a client this week that was an LLC last year and didn't make the S election or take a salary. And she said, am I out on the solo 401k? And I said, no, this is a new rule as well, is that you could still set up the solo 401k right now, past your extension deadline, which is great. The extension buys you more time. And I can do a 401k now, but I only get the employer contribution as a deduction and contribution for 2020. Now that's never been allowed. So this is a good thing. So you don't have to go down that SEP route and then convert it to a 401k later. You can just say, oh, I'll set up my solo 401k now. I'll harvest a deduction for last year, at least from the employer side. And then I'll get ready and do it right this year for the employee side. So that's cool. So you got that going for you on your deathbed. I got total consciousness in my 401k. What movie's that? Total consciousness on your deathbed from the Dalai Lama. Caddyshack, Bill Murray. And he's like, yeah, so I met the Dalai Lama and he said, you got total consciousness on your deathbed. And he's like, so I got that going for me.
I've not seen Caddyshack in a long time. I got to get back to that.
Yeah. That's
okay. So we've got let's hit the sole proprietorship, because many of you that are sole proprietorship, or let's say you're just an LLC with, you don't have an S election, it's not a partnership, so you're just getting taxed as a sole prop, you're doing Schedule C. When's your tax return deadline? It's your individual deadline. So right now you have till March 17th, typically April 15th. That's when you would contribute. May. Sorry. God damn it.
That's right.
Okay. All right.
So all the way May. Just think all the way May from who played all the way May? Madonna. In what movie? Alita Carone. All the way May. All the way May.
That's right. That's right. Okay, I remember. All right. I got that one.
Yeah. I love
all the way.
I got 2 movies on you today, bud. I'm killing you.
Yeah, you're killing me. I'm struggling today. All right, I got to come back. I'll have a comeback here soon.
Okay.
All right, I'm just focusing on all these dates that I can't get right.
Sole prop, May 17th or October 15th.
Right. Okay. October 15th, if you file an extension. So if you're like sitting right now and you haven't done this, and you're like, ooh, I'd like to do a solo CASO for 2020. I've done nothing. As long as you have your extension done, your personal extension, which is where you file your business return, your Schedule C, you're going to buy yourself some time here to get your solo K contribution in. And that's employee and employer.
Yeah. I just had, I really think we should have said this earlier. And I think this is an important tip right now. This could be the biggest takeaway for many of you. When in doubt, file an extension. It's a form 4868. You've already missed your extension for multi-member LLCs and S Corps. That was March 15th. But if you are single member LLC from last year, or no business or little side hustle last year, whatever it is, please file your extension. I have a whole other article on our newsletter this week and on my website on should I file an extension? And the answer is always yes, because the penalties start to add up for not filing an extension. And even though you might, and if you don't file an extension, you don't get this extension on the SEP or 401k either. You got to file the extension, 4868.
Okay, cool. Okay. All right. Let's see. Do you want to anything else on the solo K? One thing I'll say on the solo K, just it doesn't really apply right now because you missed the boat for those of you that are S Corps. The employee contribution, you had to put that on your W-2, even if it's Roth. It still has to be on your W-2 as a contribution, and those were due on January 31st. You didn't actually have to put the money in yet, but you did have to claim it on your W-2. So employee contributions are kind of dead right now for those of you in S Corps for 2020, even if you filed an extension, if you didn't note it on your W-2. You could still throw the employer in and you're good, or even set up a new solo case still now in your S Corp and do the employer contribution without doing the employee, because you've still got time to do that. Again, assuming you filed an extension from March 15th on your S Corp return.
Okay. Now, since I think we're good, I don't have anything else to say. We already talked about you can set up a 401k later if you needed to. You could do a SEP later if you wanted to. I would generally not recommend. Now, okay, let me give a little tip here too. Some of you are like, well, I have employees. Well, it depends. Are they full-time or part-time? And then if it is full-time, how long have they been full-time? Because if they have been full-time for less than a year, you could do the solo 401k and at least get a contribution in. And then once they hit the full year mark, you get to roll that out to an IRA. So now you get kind of an extra bang for your buck that you wouldn't get with an IRA. If your employees have not been with you for, any full-time employee has not been with you for up to 2 years, you can do the SEP. Now, although Matt and I are not a fan of the SEP, sometimes the SEP or the simplified pension, not simplified, sorry, small employer pension is a nice segue to the 401k. So some of you have to do a SEP because your full-time employees have been there at least a year, but not 2 years. So you got this kind of little window where the SEP does work. But while we're talking about retirement accounts and extensions and deadlines, what about the 990T? That was an April 15th extension deadline for the 8868 on 990Ts. Was that also extended? I don't think it was it?
No, you had to file an actual extension for the 990T. So you would have had to have filed your extension, which we did for many clients that needed 990Ts. So
that sounds good. Mr. Sweaty. I like that.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now that's the soup of the day. I'll have that. Soup du jour.
Sounds good.
Yep.
I'll have what she's having.
I'll put it on Seabass's boys check for me. I'm on fire today. I'm not even going to tell you what quote that is. That's an American classic. If you don't know who Seabass and the boys are, you better Google that and watch that movie.
Seabass said that? Yeah. Seabass said that, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Seabass and the boys, they're picking up my lunch.
Yeah, over here.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if we can't finish on that quote, I don't know what we can do, but I don't have anything else except pay attention to the deadlines, people. Our newsletter has all of these every freaking week. Open it for just 2 minutes. We're here for you. We got your back.
Yeah.
We're crying out loud.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're still listening to this show, I just want to commend you. You know, you listen to a podcast on IRA and 401k contribution deadlines. And it's important because
it's a bucket list item for a lot of people.
I mean, this is, I know this, you know, you have many choices when you open up your phone and what you can do, or sitting at, you know, working out, whatever it is you're doing to listen to. And you chose a podcast on contribution deadlines. But I say that jokingly, but also in total seriousness. We love this because this is one of the best places to build wealth. Maxing out your contributions, getting your money in by the deadline, getting as much in as you can is one of the best ways to build and save for retirement, so you can truly live those golden years you're looking forward to. So thanks for tuning in. Please give us a 5-star review if you like the show. If you don't, send those comments to mark@markjkohler.com. And
you people didn't even notice his little, you know, passive aggressive. I've got to go see our counselor. I'm not happy about this passive aggressive. Because he's alluding to the fact my golden years are closer than his.
No, that is. I mean,
did you guys catch that?
Yeah, that was not intended. That was for the listeners.
Okay,
it's for the listeners.
I but okay, everybody, we love you. We'll see you next week for another show. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.